Good morning and welcome to the Geeky Pastimes podcast on the 6th of June 2023. In the news today, we're going to be talking about Diablo 4 again because I've been playing it a huge amount and now I finished it yesterday, so I feel like I can give it a little bit of a spoiler-free review. Microsoft getting fined $20 million. Epic apparently cancelling a re-release of Unreal Tournament 3 that I didn't even know existed. The new Apple VR headset being announced. The Xbox Showcase apparently not having any CGI and maybe a couple of other things as well. So let's strap in and let's get going. Thank you to everyone that's watching this live on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes. By the way, 9 a.m. every weekday we record this live. So the first one, Diablo 4. How good is it? Weirdly, I've cooled on Diablo 4 a little bit. I mean, I talked about this a tiny bit yesterday. I touched on it. But then yesterday, I decided to stream a bit of Diablo. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty near being done. Oh, no, I just realized I didn't start my Audacity recording. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to start the podcast again really quietly. And anyone who's watched this at the beginning will be like, oh, I know what happened. You're getting a behind-the-scenes look now. So I'm going to start it again. Good morning and welcome to the Geeky Pastimes podcast on the 6th of June 2023, where we're going to be talking about my review now, spoiler-free, of Diablo 4 since I finished it, Microsoft getting fined $20 million, Epic cancelling a version of Unreal Tournament 3 that I didn't even know existed, the Apple headset, VR headset, being announced, and the Xbox Showcase, where Microsoft have made a promise about that, which should make it a lot more exciting for all of us. So, thank you very much to everyone who's been watching on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes, where we record this live, and we had kind of a false start this morning. So, those people who are watching on YouTube just got to hear a little bit extra podcast that you don't get to hear on this. So, you know, check it out sometime. Right, Diablo 4. I finished it yesterday, and I've kind of cooled on this game a little bit. I still think it's a good game, and it's still a good Diablo game. But there's definitely not the game I was hoping for. Like, I was kind of hoping this would be like a 10 out of 10, incredible, best game ever kind of thing. And it's not. It's really not that. Like, yesterday, I mean, and I kind of spoiled it for myself a little bit because I got to the end of Act 4 yesterday, before yesterday. And I was like, okay, on stream, I can probably just finish this. You know, there's probably going to be 5 acts. That's pretty standard. I'll go through it. How long could it take? Like a couple of hours, maybe? It took me I think it was about 7 more hours to finish the game. I ended up streaming for 9 hours, a couple of hours of DMZ, and then a lot of Diablo. And it just went on and on. Like, the end of that game, just every time you think it's, like, coming to an end, it's like, hey, now go fetch this, now go fetch this. And I decided, you know, I wanted to make my Diablo content stand out a little bit, be a bit different. I didn't want to just do, hey, look at this overpowered build kind of stuff, which in hindsight I probably should have. But I decided to focus on the story a little bit and go through the entire campaign, paying attention to all the story and everything. And it wasn't worth it. I would genuinely say play through the first couple of acts, focus on the story. Then after that, just skip the cutscenes. Well, not all the cutscenes. There's one good, really good CGI cutscene towards the end. But there's a lot of just nonsense in the story where I'm not going to do any spoilers for it. But there's a huge amount of the main campaign quests where it's like you're going somewhere and then it's like, oh, to get in here, we need this item. And then you go try and find the item, go to where it says it was, and they're like, oh, it's not here, but we can go find this person and they'll tell us where the item is, and you go to speak to that person and they're like, oh, well, that person's not here, they're somewhere else. Then you go to that place and then they're like, oh, well, if I'm going to help you, I need you to do these 2 things for me. And you go and do those 2 things for them. Then you come back and they're like, okay, now I'll tell you where to find that item, and you go and get the item. And then you go back and then they're like, okay, now we can all go together to the place where you were originally. And then you just go back to where you were in the first place. And it's like a long quest chain that takes like an hour or 2 that doesn't progress the story in any way. You know, sometimes it introduces a new side character, but it doesn't do anything interesting. There's no interesting fights along the way. There's no kind of cool abilities or cool things you get to see. It's very much just like, hey, go here and do this. Go here and do this. And I didn't think there were any particularly interesting boss fights. Like, I didn't think the boss fights were great. It just really kind of, I think the core gameplay of Diablo is still good. Like, the core gameplay of trying to make your build as powerful as possible and trying to keep up with the curve of difficulty, which is genuinely difficult. Like, I've fallen behind it now in tier 2. Like, I'm back to tier 1 now because it's like, in tier 2, it just takes me forever to kill stuff because as a druid, I just don't have the DPS. And so I've like fallen back off that and trying to find ways to kind of tweak your build to make yourself more powerful. That constant progression, all of that stuff's solid. Like that stuff's good. If that's what you like about Diablo and you never cared about the story or you never cared about the environments and stuff like that, then there's still a lot of game to love here. But it's just the stuff that I thought in this was going to be better than Diablo 3. I would say it's worse. I'd say the story is worse than Diablo 3. The range of environments you visit is less interesting than Diablo 3. I thought Diablo 3 did it better. They've gone for like, I know they've gone for like the Diablo 2 vibe of returning it to like a gothic horror type thing. I would say I've seen a bunch of reviews saying that they nailed the horror vibes. I really don't think they did. I don't think there was anything in this game that I would consider like horror, really. It's just got the sort of like gothic dreariness that everywhere you go is just a town of people being like, oh, our lives are so terrible. We live in such an inhospitable place. And like, that's it. I think like a lot of games like Skyrim, for example, they do a really good job of providing contrast, and The Witcher as well. The Witcher, like when you're wandering around The Witcher 3, they do a really good job of providing contrast. So when you go to a new town, when you go to a new environment, you see people living in a very different way, and you see like happiness. You know, you see some people where they're settled and stuff like that, and maybe there's a seedy underbelly. There usually is, but there's something that is, you know, you can understand that these people are actually living. In Sanctuary and Diablo, they go really overboard on a whole like, nope, everybody's miserable, every town is terrible, everyone's unhappy all of the time. And it's like even the places that are a bit more settled and aren't having to deal with like demons quite as much, they're still surrounded by demons. They're still like not anything that you would consider to be like normal life. And I think that means that makes the stuff where you see the sort of misery and you see the pain that they're going through and all that kind of thing, it makes that blander because you don't have that contrast. You don't have the contrast of like, hey, this place is fine, but this place is on, you know, the front lines against the demons. Like, this is really struggling. You don't have anything like that. It's just like everywhere's the same, you know, but this is sandy and covered in demons. This is swampy and covered in demons. This is snowy and covered in demons. It's just like that kind of thing, which I think is a real shame. But yeah, I have been enjoying it. I was regretting playing as a druid a little bit because I do feel very underpowered. I just hit level 50 and I feel very underpowered. But then I've looked it up online and the general consensus seems to be, oh yeah, druids and barbarians are probably the best at level 50 because everything else just dies constantly. So it's like, oh, cool. So all of the classes feel like they kind of suck at level 50. That's maybe a problem. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll be like, once I've got some better gear, once I manage to get some good drops, once I manage to get some like spend some Paragon points and like get better stats and stuff like that, all of that stuff will improve. I'm sure all of that stuff will get better. I might spend a bit of time today just going around getting all of the altars of Lilith. I've only done that in one region, but each of those gives you like an extra little bit of stat. So I should probably do that at some point and go around and do all that stuff. But it's just kind of right now, it doesn't feel great. And like, I realized that I messed it up a little bit for myself just by rushing through the game. And I really did rush through the game. Like, I really did sort of like plow through it. But I'm a bit disappointed with it, to be honest. I do have other things to play. So I've got Street Fighter downloading right now. So I'll be able to play a little bit of that later. I'm looking forward to that. I will stream a bit more Diablo because I want to give it a try. But I'm kind of I thought this was going to be my game that I was just going to be playing all year. And now I'm already like, I'm kind of looking to see what other games are coming out soon because I want to play something different, you know, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, let's get on to the proper news. So Microsoft's fine. This is kind of an interesting little legal story. Just because I think it's got lots of layers to it. It sort of sounds terrible and then you think about it and it's like, oh, okay. Don't know if that's a big deal. So Microsoft just got fined $20 million by America's FTC. And it's because they were gathering data on children without their parents' permission, which sounds terrible. You know, that sounds like a really bad thing. Like, oh, sneaky Microsoft getting all of the children's data without the parents knowing about it. But supposedly Microsoft say it was just like a data retention glitch. I don't know exactly what the laws are in the US, but I know in Europe there's lots of laws where it's basically like you can't store data that you don't need anymore. Like, you have to delete the data if you're not using it, or if you haven't told people that you're going to be keeping it for any longer. You know, whenever you said to people you're going to get rid of it, that's when you have to get rid of it. And apparently there was some glitch on their servers that meant a load of data wasn't deleted. And then the FTC found out about it. Or Microsoft said that they were actually working with the FTC as sort of an audit type thing. And they found this glitch, and then they sort of just accepted the fact that they had to pay a $20 million fine. And $20 million is like obviously a huge amount of money. But just to sort of put it in context, recently, I think it was like last week, Epic were fined $550 million for Fortnite because Fortnite had like UI elements that tricked children and misled children and let them do things without parents' permission. I think, a lot of it was like just how in Fortnite they do quite a lot of stuff to try and disguise how much money you're spending. And lots of games do this. Theme parks have done this in the past. Mickey's Fun Bucks at Disney or whatever. But the idea being, in Fortnite you get V-Bucks, and they try to make out that V-Bucks are like kind of an in-game thing. You get it through the Battle Pass and stuff like that. But realistically, you are spending a lot of money on it. And, they do stuff, like trying to build on people's fear of missing out and all stuff like that. They do a lot of things to try and encourage you to spend lots of money without really thinking about the fact that it's real money. And, that's a business model, I guess. Lots of people have done it. But Fortnite was seen as, okay, you're marketing to children. You have children's characters that you're selling. All of this is like bright colors and stuff like that. And it rarely ever talks about real money. If some poor parent has attached their credit card to this account, kids could easily spend loads of money. And obviously, they do spend loads of money. Like I've taught kids who have laughed about how they ended up spending over £1,000 on Fortnite. Like this is definitely a thing that happens. And so, yeah, Epic were fined $550 million, which I think is a considerable amount more money. Like that's enough to impact someone. That's enough. You could easily be like, oh, $550 million, psh, Epic make billions of dollars a year. It doesn't matter. But obviously it does matter. Like $550 million is like how much it costs to make GTA 5. Like that's an insane amount of money that would fund an entire game. This is not an insignificant amount. So I just need some water. I've got a pounding headache today. It'd be interesting to know if the amount of money Epic gained by those practices is more than a fine, though. And this is always the thing. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with Microsoft and the CMA problems of like they're talking about what if they just go ahead? Like, will the CMA just fine them? Because if they do, who cares? The whole thing of are these companies making more money than the fine costs them? In which case, it's worth just doing it. It's like Red Bull and Formula One, where they spent more than the spending cap, and then they had to just accept a fine for it. And it's like, yeah, but how much more money did they get in sponsorship because they spent more money than the spending cap and they had a better car and they're completely dominant in Formula One now? They probably made more money than that fine will cost them. So it's kind of just worth them paying the fine. And, it'll become one of these situations where the biggest teams, the teams that can afford to pay the fine, Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull will, while the smaller teams, Williams and Arrow and Haas and stuff can't. And like, that kind of sucks. So these fines it's interesting to look at them. I don't know much about it. I'm not going to pretend I understand all of it, but I think it's kind of funny to, I think it's kind of funny to, pay attention to it and just sort of keep up with it and seeing like the values that get assigned to all of these different things and then think about what else that could get spent on. Affa said Microsoft could probably forget about $20 million in about 5 minutes a year for sure. Joe Biden says, I agree with the idea Microsoft Epic would take users' data and use it to manipulate consumers is stupid. What? Who said that? I should stop reading Joe Biden's messages in chat. Like sometimes you get people in chat that just say weird stuff. That was just catering GP, nothing car related. If I could roll my eyes harder, I could go blind. Yeah, so what Affas is referring to there is the Red Bull thing, where, I'm going to explain a little bit of Formula One here, just because I think it's a funny story. But last season, Red Bull in Formula One have been the dominant team for 2 years now. Like, they've had a car that is much better than everyone else's car for 2 years. Like, just insanely better. And, part of what Formula One have tried to do to keep the race competitive is to have a spending cap. So each team's only allowed to spend a certain amount of money each year. And this should make it so the richer teams can't just make a better car. Everyone should have a kind of fairer standing, regardless of how much money they get in. And obviously that's not really true because, there's loads of other things that can go into it that can affect it. Prestige and stuff, the level of developers and engineers that you get into your team. But that was the idea anyway, and I think most people celebrated it as a good idea. And then Red Bull won the championship, and then it turned out after the championship that, like, yeah, they were definitely spending more than the spending caps. Like, they definitely spent more money on the spending cap than the spending cap would allow, and they had the best car. And lots of people were like, well, you know, this is clearly breaking the rules. You know, this is bad. And the FIA, who run Formula One, did an investigation into it. And Christian Horner, who is the Red Bull team principal, said that, oh, no, it wasn't anything to do with the car. We just spent more money on catering. And it was millions, you know, it's millions. And realistically, their catering bill probably is millions. But obviously, if you say something like that, if you say, like, oh, it's just catering, then it's like, but that money still is, like, from a total pot of money. Like, that money that you just didn't account for from catering is money that you probably spent on a bloody car. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, you know, if you gave someone, I don't know, if you earn like £40,000 a year, and then you're in trouble, like, financially, and it's like, you know, like, oh, you know, where's your money gone on? And it's like, oh, you know, I've been buying food, I've been paying rent, I've got my car and stuff like that. And then, you know, I also spend £10,000 a year on Yu-Gi-Oh cards. But it's like, but, you know, I owe £5,000, so it's probably all that £5,000 I'm spending on food. That's probably the problem. And it's like, what about the money that you're spending on Yu-Gi-Oh cards? They're like, well, that's completely different money. That's completely silly. Oh, sorry, Affa said they broke the 2021 spending cap, not the 2022 one. Oh, fair enough. But yeah, it's a very silly thing. But surely that's when they're developing the car for 2022. I don't know. But anyway, it's a very silly kind of explanation. And then they ended up just getting a fine, which the whole point of this is that Red Bull is one of the richest teams, and therefore, the spending cap was put to try and stop them from being so dominant, you know, stop teams like that from being dominant. And it's like, then to give them a fine seems like a very silly punishment, to be like, oh, you spent too much money because you're so rich. Here, we're going to take a little bit more of your money. And it's like, well, for them, it could just be seen as the cost of doing business. They could just look at that and be like, you know what? We could just break this rule every year and then just pay the fine and we'd be fine. Because they're making way more money than that just from, you know, sponsorship and, you know, the winnings. They're making a huge amount more money from that than they would be otherwise. So it's a very, very silly situation. A lot of people said, oh, they should have had a points penalty. You know, they should have been maybe disqualified from a certain number of races, or had like a points penalty taken off the championship points. The problem is, it's a bit weird, like, after you have the winning ceremony, if you're like, hey, Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship, or, you know, Max Verstappen won the Drivers' Championship, and then a month later you say, well, we're going to deduct 20 points, so you're not actually the winners anymore. It feels a bit hollow, you know, it feels like it undermines the whole thing, because the team that have now won aren't going to have a ceremony, they aren't going to have the hype or anything, it's just going to go in the record books that technically they won, which is, you know, not a lot of fun. That's why they don't tend to like doing stuff at the end of races, like after races, saying, like, whoever won, like, giving them a penalty that means they didn't win anymore. They, like, I think they're quite reluctant to do stuff like that, because then, you know, like, they've already had the podium, they've already had the champagne, they've already had sort of their face all over the track and stuff. It doesn't really work out. But yeah, it's a weird thing. Anyway, fines are big companies and stuff like that. Not something I understand very much of, but I think it's a fun thing to look at. Then the third news story that we're looking at today, or the third thing that I want to talk about today, is the Epic cancelling Unreal Tournament 3. So this is a story that I knew absolutely nothing about, like absolutely nothing. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So Epic were apparently planning on releasing a version of Unreal Tournament 3 for free. This is very difficult for me to say because I know I don't pronounce free properly. But anyway, they were planning on releasing a version of this for free on all PC platforms. So on Steam, on Good Old Games, and on Epic. And it was going to have crossplay between them. So all of that stuff would have been fun. Like, that would have been an exciting thing. Unreal Tournament 3 is a good game. Like, it was a fun game. Maybe it isn't the one that lots of people remember as, like, their favorite game. You know, that might be 2004, or it might be, you know, the original, whatever. But it was still a very, very, very fun game. And the only reason people really knew about this is because when you upload games to Steam, there is like a Steam page kind of created for it, that's like just exists as sort of in the database for Steam, which is publicly available. You can see that some games exist, and people could see that it was there. And people were excited about it. And then yesterday, I think it all disappeared, which lots of people think means that Epic has just cancelled it. Epic's just cancelled the project entirely. There's a chance, I would say there's a chance that they've actually done something where they can hide it, and then it will end up being, you know, announced at something like Summer Games Fest or one of the many shows happening over the next week. I think it's still possible that it will return, but it does look a bit like it's just been cancelled, which sucks, because that would be a fun thing, you know, getting to play Unreal Tournament free again. If it's free to play and everyone gets to go, it looks like it wasn't even going to be like free to play with microtransactions, but it was just going to be free. Like, it was just going to be something anyone could download and play. I think that would have been really cool. But yeah, looks like it's probably cancelled now. Unreal Tournament's a really interesting one where there isn't really another game like it. Like, there was, you know, like Unreal Tournament, obviously there was lots of different versions of it, and then there was Lawbreakers, which I would say was probably the closest thing we had to it, and there was, you know, Quake Arena and things like that that have kind of similar vibes, but there's not really something else that exists like it today. You know, it has lots of very fast gameplay, lots of modding, lots of, you know, being able to put fun modifiers on and stuff and messing with the rules, and loads of like crazy weapons that worked, you know, in interesting ways and different ways to other games. And it just kind of, it was something that stood by itself. And I don't think it was ever the most popular thing. You know, it was never popular in the same way that Counter-Strike was, and it was never popular in the same way that Call of Duty has been. But it was definitely amongst PC gamers, and, you know, it did okay on console. It was something that was just a really fun, you know, I would say relatively casual shooter. You know, I know it did have a competitive scene and people did do stuff, but I think a lot of people played it in the same way they play Smash Brothers, where they're just kind of having a laugh with their friends. And it was cool. And the idea that if you know, they released a version of it that anyone could play and you could set up your own private servers and put all the modifiers on, I would have had an awesome time with that. I think that would have been really cool. But yeah, seems like it might have been cancelled, which kind of sucks, kind of sad. Now, the next news story, and we've got two more, and yeah, like the last one I want to talk about a little bit. But the next one, the Apple headset has been announced. I can't even remember what they bloody called this thing, but it's an Apple VR headset. And when I say VR, it's actually like what they call XR. Oh, it's the Vision Pro, that's what it's called. And so it does like VR stuff and it does augmented reality stuff. That's what we're talking about, Diabetic. Just good timing for you to get into this. Yeah, so it's XR. So it's got like mixed reality, they call it. So it's got like augmented reality stuff where like you can see the world around you, and then stuff will be overlaid on it. So, you know, like if anyone had a 3DS, you got little stuff with the 3DS where you put a card down, and if you look through the 3DS, the cameras, you could see like, you know, a little 3D world appearing and little games and stuff. It was cool. It was kind of fun. It was kind of cool. Microsoft has been experimenting with this for a long time with Microsoft HoloLens. I got a chance to try that out in New York a while ago, and it was terrible. Like really, really bad. It's like you put on these big goggles, like big like glasses, and then you can see normally, but then like in like one square of your vision, there was like 3D things would appear in front of you, but they were kind of see-through. It didn't work very well. I didn't think it worked very well. I didn't like it. But yeah, that was a thing. And so Apple have brought out this, but it is also going to be able to do VR stuff as well. So it is going to have some stuff where you can see into the world. Just it's not see-through, so it's not going to have the problem that HoloLens had where stuff is see-through that you can see. It's going to be like have cameras on it. It's got like 11 cameras on it or something. And then it will display that on the screens in your face, on your face. So you'll be able to see the world and then interact with stuff in it. The big news about this, like the big thing about it, is it's $3,500. They haven't said how much it's going to be in other markets, but $3,500 is insane. Like someone pointed out, you could buy 11 Oculus Quest 2s, Meta Quest 2s for that price. Like that's an insane amount of money. And you got to think like, what's this actually for? This isn't going to be, I think I've seen some news websites portraying this as if it's going to be a top tier VR gaming thing. It's definitely not, because it doesn't have any controllers. It's relying purely on like hand gestures and stuff, hand tracking and hand gestures. So it is not going to be a big gaming thing, you know, because most VR, you know, no one's going to develop VR games for one platform that doesn't have controllers when it costs $3,500. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, that would be absolutely insane. It's so what is it going to be for? Well, like, probably it'll be for, so there'll be some special experiences made for it, you know, stuff like being able to go into the Grand Canyon or go into Antarctica or something like that, and you'll be able to look around and it'll all look very nice. They've talked about there being like equivalent of like a FaceTime type thing where you can talk to the other person and you will be able to see them somehow. They'll be presented somehow. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. They talked about a weird thing where it's like, oh, it's got loads of cameras on it, and then you'll be able to share what you see with other people in like 3D video. And it's like, that sounds like that's just going to get used for porn. Like, I literally am struggling to think of another situation where that would be a good thing. Because, you know, the whole point of FaceTime, if you have like a FaceTime chat or whatever they call it on different platforms, the whole point is that you're looking at each other's faces. But with this, you're going to be looking at what the other person can see, not like their face. So it's like having a conversation with someone that you can't see, but you can see their environment. And like, that's a really weird situation. Unless people are going to sit in front of a mirror, maybe. Again, it's probably going to get used for porn. But like, maybe if people sit in front of a mirror, you could have a conversation, but that would be super weird. And then I'm sure there's going to be like a weird dissonance of like, if you put these goggles on and then you're like FaceTiming with someone else, but like they're moving and you're like, you can't control the movement at all. So any time you move, it's going to make them feel sick. And anytime they move, it's going to make you feel sick. I just don't understand the sort of benefit of that. I don't understand the point of it, like what that's for. And then I'm sure there'll be other little things. You know, I'm sure they'll do it like House is saying there, he uses HoloLens at work, that it's a consumer device. Sorry, it's a professional tool. It's not a consumer device. Like there'll be some uses for stuff like that. So people like interior designers will be able to like make a 3D mock-up of an environment and then be like, hey, you know, this is our plan. And then you put this on and you can look around your house and see all the new furniture or the new paint or whatever. Stuff like that. You know, it will get used by companies, and that's why it's $3,500 probably. It will get used by companies for some crazy interactive experiences. I still don't think it's something that would be that great. As someone that has used a lot of VR headsets and a lot of mixed reality stuff, it's never that great. It's just not. Like, there's just so many problems with it that it's not something that I would, even if it wasn't $3,500, not something that I'd be super excited about. I would say with HoloLens, the whole thing of it not being a professional tool, not a consumer tool, they definitely were trying to push the idea that it could be used for games. You know, if you look at the original pictures for it, like when they showed it off at E3 type events, they showed it off with Minecraft and stuff like that. And then when I tried it out in the Microsoft store in New York, like in their flagship store, then they were talking to me about games and they were trying to show, you know, because they could see that I was wearing a Street Fighter t-shirt or something. They were talking to me about games and how it could be used for that. And it just never took off because I just don't think, A, it was too expensive and no one was ever going to develop games for it. And B, the system doesn't work very well for games. It just wasn't a thing, especially not having any controllers. It's quite hard to do games that work well. And this Apple Vision Pro, I'm just like, what would someone use it for at home? Like, what, someone who's sitting at home and whacks on this Apple Vision Pro, what are they realistically going to use it for? That $3,500 will be better. And, you know, in the advert they used, in the reveal for it, they were like, oh, you know, it's $3,500, but then because of this, you don't need to spend loads of money on a big TV and on a sound system and on like whatever else. And it's like, but when you buy a big TV, most people, I would argue, and I don't know if this is true, but I would say most people live in a house with other people. Most people don't live alone. And so when you buy a big TV, the big TV is like a family thing, isn't it? The big TV is a shared thing that you watch TV with other people. With this, you can't, unless you're going to buy $3,500 headsets for each person in your household. It's something that only one person can experience, and that's really, really weird. Like, that's something that's bad, I think. You know, it's just a problem. It's a fundamental problem with VR that, like, I've owned HTC Vive, an Oculus Quest 2, and PlayStation VR 1, And I don't use any of them anymore. I've sold all the PC ones, and I still have a PSVR 1, but just because it's not really worth much anymore. But I've got rid of all of them, and the biggest problem for me, other than there's not that many games for it, and the games that exist are normally quite simple and stuff. The biggest and it's uncomfortable, and it's a bit of a pain to set up. But the biggest problem is that I can't play it while interacting with other people. If I'm streaming with VR, I can't bloody see chat, so I can't react to anything like that, which I find kind of annoying and defeats the point of streaming for me. And then if I'm sort of playing games when I'm sitting on a sofa next to my wife can't see anything. It's just like I'm just in a little world of my own, cutting off everyone else from me. And that's not a fun experience. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good experience. And it's like, I suppose some people could argue, oh, well, in the future, this is how people will meet up. Everyone will have VR, and then you'll socialize within VR. And like that to me is a pretty bleak experience. Like that to me is not an experience that I want to move towards. I don't want society to move towards everyone just being in their own little bubble in real life and ignoring everyone else. That seems unpleasant to me for some reason. And there's also another thing that I saw someone point out that I hadn't thought about before, is that a lot of people nowadays, it's just kind of ingrained in their head, and again, probably not a healthy behavior, but a lot of people, when they're watching a film or playing a game, they'll check their phone fairly regularly, and they'll be having conversations on their phone with people. You can't do that very easily in VR, because you've got to be constantly like taking off the headset, looking at your phone, or lifting it up, looking at your phone and stuff. It makes it harder to do that, to like keep engaged with like other things in the world. So yeah, I'm not a fan. I have seen with this Apple Vision Pro, they do this, they do have the camera so you can see out of it. And then when you do that, weirdly, they project a picture of your eyes on the front of the screen. There's like a screen on the front of the headset, which I'm sure will be a part of the cost, which is insane to have a high quality screen on the outside of the headset. But it's so, if you're looking through it, people can see your eyes. Like, it's not like actually seeing your eyes, just seeing a picture of your eyes, like, or a video of your eyes projected, which seems weird. But yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't understand. Well, no, I'm saying I don't understand who's going to buy it. I know who's going to buy it. People who love Apple products. The same people who spend £1,000 on an iPhone. The same people who spend £2,000-3,000 on a MacBook. Those are the people that are going to buy a headset like this. And even then, I think, it might be a tough ask for them. People that buy AirPods, people that buy an Apple Watch. Apple products are famously very, very expensive and more limited in what they do than other things. There's some valid reasons for buying Apple products. Essentially, it's like, oh, you might buy an iPhone because the cameras are really good. You might... I don't actually know why you'd buy a MacBook. Like, it used to be, people would be like, oh, well, stuff like Photoshop and stuff runs better on it. I don't think that's been true for a very long time. But, like, there might be reasons why you'd buy some stuff like that. With this, it's just, what are you going to do with it? Like, in reality, I would guess most of the people that buy this will put it on, and there'll be some kind of crazy experience you can have that comes with it. Well, be like, oh my God, you're in the Grand Canyon. Oh my God, you're in a forest. Hey, look, you can chat to all of these other people. And then they will immediately take it off again. And then they will never use it again in their life. And it will be sitting in a cupboard or sitting on a shelf because, they can show off that they own it. It'll be something like that. And that will be bleak. And it will just gather dust until they have friends come over, and then they'll be like, hey, you should have a go at this, it's amazing. And then people will be like, oh, cool, what do you do with it? And it's like, oh, I use it all the time, blah, blah, blah. But they won't. It'll just sit on a shelf. It'll just be rubbish. Music programs probably still run better on a Mac. I don't understand why they would. Why would it? Like, what would be the point? It just seems silly. It just seems like a bad product to me. And some people have said, oh, well, this is, one of these like concept products where it's super expensive, but it will exist. And then so the technology will eventually be cheaper, and eventually there'll be like what they call it, a Halo project. And eventually there'll be like $1,000 version of it. And then that'll be the one that people buy and people enjoy. But I still think even removing the price from the equation, like, what is this really for? Because it's not for games. It just doesn't make sense it'd be game. People won't make games for a thing that costs $3,500. So it won't like lead the way for gaming in VR, and it doesn't have controllers. Like, that's a big problem, I think, that it doesn't have any controllers. So then it's like, okay, so is it for people to watch films and stuff on? Well, it's like, no, I think for most people watching films is still a social experience, so it won't be that really. Will it be for this weird VR chat thing? I don't see why you would want to talk to someone and be able to see their thing, and every time they move, it makes you feel sick, but you can't actually see the person. Like, will it be for professional stuff? Like I said, estate agents and stuff showing people around? Well, maybe, but then it never needs to become a niche thing because, you know, stuff that's for professions doesn't ever need to become like a consumer product. I just don't see what the path is for this. I don't see what the point of it is, really. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's going to exist. It's coming out later this year, apparently. I don't understand the point of it. I really don't understand what people are going to want to do with it, other than porn. I'm sure people will use it for porn. Even then, it's a very expensive porn thing. You know, it's like a very expensive way to experience porn, but I'm sure that will probably happen. I should probably talk about some of the other features of it. It has, like, one of the things to make it more comfortable is the battery isn't on it, which is, you know, a heavy bit of the Meta Quest. Instead, it's on like a little pack that you have to wear in a pocket or something. That seems like a mistake as well, because, you know, say, going back to what we were talking about, of imagine a situation where this is used for people, so you're looking around a house and you want to see what it's going to look like when it's finished or when it's decorated, and the person's like, hey, put this on, and then you'll be able to see it. So you whack it on. Imagine if you're someone that is wearing clothes that doesn't have pockets. You are a person wearing a dress. You don't have pockets. What are you going to do with the battery pack? Can't use it now unless you just hold the battery in your hand, which is going to be a crap experience if the UI, which doesn't have any controllers, needs you to use your fingers and stuff. You know, it's like immediately there's problems with that. Immediately you've got an issue. What about if they're going to use it on theme park rides? You know, like there was a spate of theme park rides using VR, which they've nearly all taken their VR off now because it doesn't work very well. But like, then like, what are you going to do with those battery packs then? It just seems like that's a problem. It's also the screens are apparently each screen is like got more pixels in it than a 4K screen. And they're just like right up close to your eyes. And the pixel density is like 64 times what it is on an iPhone. So it should remove the screen door effect. It should make the VR stuff look a lot clearer, you know, which is good, I guess. It's got a 2-hour battery life, Tom Wallace is saying. Yeah, 2-hour battery life, so you won't be able to watch a lot of films. You won't be able to watch Across the Spider-Verse because it's 2.25 hours long. Just, like, I just don't understand. It seems weird. Affa said there's nothing that would convince you to use a public headset managed by an estate agent. That sounds like an eye infection on waiting. That was a big worry when a lot of theme park rides and roller coasters started using VR. And then that meant that they had to have people wiping down every headset with like disinfectant wipes after every single go, which then meant the queues got much longer because it took a lot longer to like get everyone off the train, wipe down every headset, and then let the new people on. Then they'll have to put the headsets on, adjust the headsets, and then go. It meant the queues got much longer. It was just rubbish, and then a lot of them didn't work and stuff. Can't see it being better than a Quest Pro. I haven't used a Quest Pro, so I've got no idea. But I imagine it will be an impressive experience. Like it's got a very powerful processor in it. It's got very impressive screens in it. I'm sure whatever the experience that they make for it will be impressive. It will be an impressive thing to see. But I just don't think it's going to be something that anyone will use very much. It just seems like a waste of time. It's the sort of thing where, from what they've talked about it, even if it was $500, I can't see myself buying it because it's just like, what would I use it for? Like, what would be the point? Even like when they've tried to big up the whole like the metaverse thing of like you being able to talk to other people in it. Imagine the sorts of people that are going to buy this and use it. Will probably be tech, you know, the tech people, the people who are really into tech. Those people tend to not be the most sociable of people. Like, they tend to not be like maybe the most enigmatic, charismatic people in the world. So like launch day, all these people are going to put it on and are going to go into like, is there going to be some like public chat room, and they'll go in and then they'll be like, what's going on? And it's going to be like dead. It's going to be like really socially awkward. It's the whole problem. Like if you go in VR chat things, it's normally a bunch of kids in there because kids like chat rooms and stuff like that. You know, it's like, it's not going to be Apple, I'm sure, will present it as like loads of cool, hip people, young professionals sharing amazing ideas and music and stuff like that. It's not gonna be that. It's gonna be a bunch of kids screaming at each other, rich kids screaming at each other because their parents have to be super rich to be able to afford this. And then it's gonna be a load of socially awkward people who don't want to spend time in a chat thing because they don't want to talk to other people. And then, you know, there'll probably be some racists and stuff as well. There'll be some people being toxic, and then moderation will be a massive problem. And going back to it one last time, there'll be a load of people who just bought it for porn. There'll be a lot of creepy weirdos in there. A lot of really creepy weirdos who'll be like, oh, you a girl? Oh my God. And that kind of thing. Like, it's gonna be weird. If anyone remembers, or anyone, people my age, remember AOL and Yahoo chat rooms in the early days of, like, social media type stuff, there was a lot of creepy people. A lot of very, very creepy people. There was a lot of people talking about cybersex and things like that, and it was, like, not a pleasant place to be for anybody, really. And that was just, you know, when there was just chat rooms, it was like these people were suddenly allowed to talk to people without seeing them face to face, and people immediately became perverts, or just continued being perverts, probably. With this, it's going to be like, hey, now you can be talking to someone and ask them to, like, look down at what they're wearing or something. You know, it's going to be weird. It's going to be very, very odd. You hope they have their child safety locked down. Yeah, I don't know what Apple are like for stuff like that at all. Got no idea. But it doesn't seem great. Just going through a few of the chat things that people have said. Hey, look, the Vardor stream got demonetized just like that. I do wonder, like, people always talk about, oh, Yahoo, like, YouTube is, like, super sensitive about demonetizing stuff. I've literally never had something demonetized. I know once I have. One video I had got a live stream got demonetized, and it was because I said something that sounded like a swear word, and that was it. And it's like, since then, I've been in streams where people have sworn, never had a problem with it. It was just one time I said something that wasn't even a swear, but it sounded like one, and that was it. It's really bizarre. I've never had any problems, like, with all the stuff that we've talked about. Not once. And then other people seem to, like, get demonetized all the time. Maybe it's because I don't have as many viewers. I don't know. Speaking of which, don't forget to like the stream. It does help me out an absolute bunch. God, I got a bad headache today. Really bad headache. Sucks. It's chucking it down with rain outside. I wonder if it's like a storm thing. Or maybe it's because I played Diablo for like 9 hours yesterday. Who knows? Flynn said, me and my mates have had fun with VR with the one headset, would have what we're seeing on a TV, and we'd take turns at Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah. Stuff like that, like where you can share a game on a TV. You can definitely have some fun with it. It's definitely like, it is possible to do stuff like that where you connect it to a TV. I don't know whether this one will send an image to the TV or not. I've got no idea at all. Anything else to do? House UK says, I'm nearly 50, already get wrecked in COD because my reflex is slowing. Now I can get wrecked in VR because I'm unfit and knackered after 20 minutes jumping about. I do kind of enjoy games like that. I do kind of like having, I do quite like having games where your physical fitness actually matters, you know, like Just Dance and Connect Sports and stuff like that. Because it, like, felt like, oh, you're actually getting a bit of exercise while you're doing this. You know, I do feel bad when I play Diablo for 9 hours and I'm just sitting here. I feel like that's probably very, very bad for me. And hi, Invader, who's apparently a YouTuber that Fogger follows. Thanks for coming by. Anything else? Lackey's got Westy's entire stream demonetized once, but he did drop the big words, the big C word 3 times in one sentence. Yeah, that's kind of bad. I've just never had it happen. I've had people, I've been in games with Lackey where he said stuff like that, and it's never affected me, but maybe it's something to do. See you next Tuesday, Invader. Maybe you can work it out from but yeah, I think maybe it's a thing where if you've got like thousands of viewers, then maybe that, like, they're stricter on it or something like that. I don't really know. Not really sure how it works. Anyway, let's get on to the last news story that I wanted to talk about today, and that is the Xbox showcase. Now, this is something that's not happening till Sunday, so we'll probably talk about it a bit more on Friday or something like that. But I was a bit aware that tomorrow I want to talk about Summer Games Fest, because I want to do, like, predictions, speculation, because that's happening Thursday. Well, I suppose actually it's going to happen Thursday night, so we could do it Thursday morning. But anyway, we'll do that. And then the day after, we'll be talking about what was shown at Summer Games Fest. So we should talk about the Xbox showcase a little bit, because that's the one I'm probably most excited about. And they've put out a thing on Twitter, which I think is quite a big deal, saying that, I'll try and find the exact quote because I don't want to be wrong about this. But they're saying that the Xbox showcase won't have any trailers that are just CGI. They won't present any games that are only CGI. Which I think is really cool, because that's something that a lot of people have been critical of PlayStation 4, and me included. Like, I was kind of annoyed that a lot of the showcases in the Sony showcase, a lot of the games that were showed off, it was just a CGI trailer. You know, you think things like Metal Gear Solid, just entirely CGI. And it's like people get really hyped up for some of that stuff, but it's like because, you know, they're imagining what it could be. But it is just your imagination. And we talked yesterday about with Call of Duty, there's always a danger that when something gets leaked, but we don't know any real details on it, people just speculate wildly, and your imagination isn't constrained by like technical limitations, by resource limitations, you know, by reality. And so you can kind of imagine whatever you want. Then when it shows real gameplay, you're almost definitely going to be a little bit disappointed. It's rare that you wouldn't be disappointed. And it feels like maybe companies could use that. I'm trying to put this in a tactful way. Maybe companies could use those CGI trailers because the actual game doesn't look that great. You know, if you've got a game that does look great already, you want to kind of show it off. If you're using a CGI trailer, that immediately makes me think, something is a little bit off. Now, I know there's probably going to be some pedantic people be like, well, actually, everything's computer-generated imagery because you're talking about a computer game. But you know what I mean. When we talk about CGI, we mean something that isn't running an engine. We mean something that is pre-rendered in some other software, and therefore the game itself isn't going to look like that. And, you know, sometimes people use CGI trailers just because it's a really early announcement, and, you know, graphics and stuff like that might not get polished until very late in development. And so they don't want to show off what the game looks like now because it looks like trash now. They want to show off, you know, kind of give you an idea of what it might look like in the future. That's possible. And sometimes they want to focus on the story. And, you know, Blizzard do these incredible CGI things for like World of Warcraft. And everyone knows World of Warcraft doesn't look like that. But it's just kind of really getting across the story that's the important thing. But I think with games, personally, I would always much rather have at least some gameplay in every trailer. And they've said that they've said no Xbox first-party games. So, strictly speaking, there could be third-party games that are CGI. But they've said no first-party game will be full CGI. They said it will either be in-engine cinematics, which can still be a bit misleading because, you know, in-engine can mean a lot of things. You can have something, say if you have an open world video game for an in-engine cinematic, you could just have a tiny slice of that world. So now the Xbox isn't having to render the rest of the world. It can do more spectacular things and make it look better. But anyway, and they've said that there'll be gameplay. So in-engine cinematics and gameplay, which is positive, I think. That's something that I think is a bit more exciting. But yeah, so a few other things that they've said. So they have said the Xbox Showcase will be streamed at 4K 60 frames a second. That's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. It's going to have the Starfield Direct immediately afterwards. So straight after it ends. So the showcase is on Sunday, 10 a.m. PT, which is like 6 o'clock for us, something like that. And then as soon as it ends, there will be the Starfield Showcase, Starfield Direct, where they're going to show off that and lots of gameplay from that, which would be cool. They've said no Xbox first-party game will be full CGI. They'll also have in-engine cinematic gameplay. And they've said there'll be no movie or TV show trailers. Again, feels like a little bit of a jab at Sony, because Sony had that... what was it? They had a TV show in theirs, didn't they? Oh, the Gran Turismo movie. They had a Gran Turismo movie trailer. So it feels like Microsoft are kind of being like, oh, like, we're like having little jabs at Sony, some of the things that wasn't so great about their showcase. But what I wanted to talk about really today is what are you hoping for from this showcase? Like, what are you hoping people are going to see there? And I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be an interesting show because people obviously have high expectations for this. Microsoft's first party stuff has been quite poor for a while. It hasn't been doing that well. You know, if you look at some of the big first party releases, obviously Redfall was disappointing. Halo Infinite was disappointing. Grounded was okay, but not really what people wanted. Obsidian's Pentiment was cool, but maybe not, not a mainstream game. Plague Tale Requiem was fun. Although, actually, that might not be first party. I don't know. I feel like that was on PlayStation 2. Not sure. But they haven't had much else. Forza Horizon 5 was good, but not like groundbreaking, not amazing. It feels like they haven't really had a game that really hit the mainstream as like, this is an incredible game. This is a reason to, you know, get Game Pass or get Xbox or get PC or anything like, or get a PC or whatever. And it's like, what game could be that? So games we're expecting to see, games that I would say are likely to see, obviously Starfield, which I'm really excited about. Starfield's my most anticipated game of this year. So I'm really excited about that. I would expect to see Forza Motorsport because that's coming out this year. So we're going to see some proper gameplay of that. That'll be exciting. And then it's like everything else is kind of a bit up in the air. Like, are we going to see Avowed? I was really excited by look of Avowed. For anyone who doesn't know, that is Obsidian's fantasy RPG. First person thing, looked a bit like Skyrim, but you know, not anything to do with Elder Scrolls or anything like that. They've created their own universe. If it is on the scale or on the quality of Skyrim or something like that, but it looked really good in the trailer they showed off. They already showed off a bit of gameplay of that. I think that could be really cool. So I'm excited about the possibility for Avowed, and you never know. Like, I can't imagine they would want to release it too close to Starfield, but maybe Avowed will come before Starfield, or maybe it will come like at the beginning of next year or something. That could be cool. Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, Sacrifice, whatever it's called. That I imagine we'll see some more of. And the first of those games was really good. Again, not a game that I imagine people would go out and buy an Xbox for, but a game that I'd like to see more of, so that'd be cool. Then you've got a load of things where it's like, we don't really know much about them. And like, if they do get shown off, I don't know how excited I'd be. So there's like Fable. I love Fable 1 and 2. And I even really like Fable 3, to be honest. But it's like, the fact that they've shown so little of it makes me think that it's maybe not in the best state. And it's like, I'm very tentative about whether that game's going to be good or not. I'd like it to be good. Like Playground Games, who make the Forza Horizon games, they're working on it. They've done some amazing things for Forza Horizon. But also, Forza Horizon 5 wasn't really innovating very much. And I know, obviously, that'll be a different team to the people who are working on Fable. But it worries me a little bit that maybe Fable will end up playing it safe. We'll see, you know, we'll see what happens. But Fable could be there potentially. State of Decay 3, I've never really got into any of the State of Decay games. A new one of those could be cool, especially if they, you know, started coming to grips with... I think State of Decay's always been a game that's had interesting systems in it and some interesting, you know, like, it's something that's quite different. You know, you play co-op, you have all of these different survivors, you're building up bases, going on doing missions, scavenging and stuff. But it's never had something that kept people coming back. And so maybe if they could learn a little bit from the Battle Royale games and the extraction shooter games, maybe they could do something really cool. Like a State of Decay extraction shooter could be really cool. So some of that might be interesting, maybe. Gears of War, it's been a long while since there's been a Gears of War game, so maybe we'll get Gears of War 6. Or I wouldn't be surprised with Gears of War if they ended up doing a bit of like a reboot type thing and doing a new one that's just called Gears of War. Maybe, because that game is like, how many more times can they release another game where it's like third person shooting and you're shooting some locusts and hiding behind chest high cover? It feels like that's been done. Like, all the Gears of War games have been good. Like, they haven't been bad at all. But it's just kind of, they've all been quite samey. And like, right now, if you go back and you play the Gears of War, like they did the re-release version of it. If you go back and play that, and then you play Gears of War 5, they feel like basically the same game in a different setting. Like, there's not been a lot of innovation there. Scalebound starting up again. That would be exciting. I've got a Scalebound t-shirt, actually. I found that the other day. And was like, oh, it's like a collector's item that I've got that. So it'd probably be pretty cool. So yeah, that's like Scalebound, something that I would like to see more of. I thought that looked really cool, but I don't think we'll see more of it. What other games could we potentially get? Like, anything new for Halo? There's always been rumors that there'd be a Halo Battle Royale, like a Halo Infinite Battle Royale, but with Halo Infinite not doing so well, that seems unlikely now. But, you know, anything's possible. Maybe something with Banjo-Kazooie, like a new platformer. They haven't had something like that. Aviva Pinata would be really cool. I'd be really excited about that. Although I know Rare are obviously working on that Everwild, aren't they? Like, that's something. Sea of Thieves 2, if they did a proper sequel to Sea of Thieves, that would be awesome. I'd be excited for that. Like, basically whatever Rare do, I'd be quite excited. I didn't think Everwild looked very interesting, but we didn't see much of it. But if they did a Sea of Thieves 2, or they did a new Banjo-Kazooie, or they did something new, like a completely new IP, I'd be up for that. I'd be excited for that. Will we see anything of Perfect Dark from the Initiative? Like, lots of people... Like, the Initiative, for anyone who doesn't know, was a studio where they got some of the best talent from loads of other companies to come and work there. And then it was announced that they were doing a Perfect Dark game, and there was a CGI trailer for that. And then we didn't hear anything else. And then it seemed like a load of people left the project. Loads of people left the initiative. Loads of those big names just quit. And that, you know, that sounds a bit worrying. So it's like, are we going to see that? Like, maybe that's a long way away. Maybe that's even been cancelled. Who knows? What about Bethesda? Like, are we going to see a new Wolfenstein? Are we going to see a new Doom, maybe? Something like Hexen or Heretic, maybe. Something like that, possibly. Like that, something like that could happen. I do always keep on wondering whether we're going to see... whether we could get something from Activision at the Microsoft showcase, you know, whether they were expecting the deal to be done. As I was saying yesterday, maybe they'll even announce that they are going ahead with the deal and kind of screw the CMA and work that out later, but they're going to go, maybe they'll go ahead with the deal. I don't know if they can because of the stuff with the FTC. I know the FTC are like suing to stop it, and that hasn't been heard in court yet, so I don't know how that works out. But yeah, maybe we could get something from Activision, because they can have third parties there. They used to show off Call of Duty games at the Xbox showcases, so we could even get the new Call of Duty at the Xbox showcase. That could happen. I'm not really sure what else. Like, first party wise, it's a real struggle to think of like exciting new things, because with Xbox, sequels aren't that exciting. Like, they don't have many franchises where it's like a sequel's really exciting. You know, I'm looking forward to a new Forza game, because there hasn't been a Forza Motorsport for ages, but we already know that's coming. I wouldn't care about a new Halo or a Gears of War right now, I don't think, because like I've just kind of got bored of those franchises. It becomes a lot more difficult to think about it. A new Fallout, I think, yeah, with Andy Smith joking about like Elder Scrolls 6, it's like, I think with Starfield, and then we know they're going to work on Elder Scrolls 6, I think a Fallout would be a very long way away. I think I assume the team that made Fallout New Vegas at Obsidian are probably the people who are working on Avowed, because, you know, it's a first-person RPG game. I assume that that's the same team. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think we'll see a Fallout game unless it's a different studio, unless they get someone completely different working on it. Like, imagine if it was like, oh, Arcane, like the main Arcane studio, the people who made Deathloop. Imagine if they're like, they might announce something, could be a new Dishonored. But imagine if they were put on a Fallout game. Imagine if it was like, oh yeah, there's a new Fallout game, but it's being made by Arcane. That would be super exciting. That'd be cool. And then, yeah, Microsoft just kind of hit the nail on the head for me of how I feel about it. That probably the biggest deal is not the announcements, it's what's coming to Game Pass. Because they nearly always announce something cool coming to Game Pass. They nearly always do a thing where it's like, oh yeah, now this is available on Game Pass right now, and it's, you know, something amazing. If they were suddenly like, Call of Duty is available on Game Pass, like all of the Call of Duty games are available on Game Pass, that would be huge. Something like that, where it's like some big game, Diablo on Game Pass would be awesome. Something like that, I think, could be huge. Andy Smith says, what's the lowdown on Call of Duty? It was rumored to just be a massive update, and then they were skipping a game release, and now I hear sequel. You know what, Andy? All of that was leaks and people, I don't know, I don't even want to say rumors. It's just leaks, isn't it? And it's all just a load of nonsense. And hopefully I would like to think this year has done a really good job of showing why you shouldn't pay any attention to Call of Duty leakers. Because they just keep on making a big deal out of stuff and then changing their minds and going back on themselves, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, who cares? Nothing's been announced yet. We have no idea. All we know about Call of Duty is that Activision have said in their earnings call that there is a full Call of Duty game coming out this year. That's all they've said. Officially, we don't know anything else about it. I know there are leaks and stuff like that about it, but I just think they're so boring and they just kill the fun of any announcement. I'd much rather find out about a new Call of Duty game from a trailer. Like, if they drop a trailer and it's like, oh my god, what is it? That'd be awesome. Unfortunately, obviously, I have seen the leaks and stuff like that because people are bloody dickheads and they share all of it and it's really, really annoying. But that is what it is. I would love to find out about a new Call of Duty game and it was something unexpected. I'd love it if the leaks were wrong. I'd love it if there was something and it was completely different. You know, it was like, oh, this year we're actually getting, you know, just like a pure zombies game, or we're getting Advanced Warfare 2 or something like that. That would be amazing. I would love that so much. Jack Barrett said they'll probably have some sort of segment emphasizing Game Pass games coming to cloud. Maybe. I think like they want to downplay the whole cloud thing because that's the thing that's causing them problems with this whole Activision merger. So I wouldn't be surprised if they want to kind of not talk about cloud too much. They like, I mean, games, they always talk about, they always have things when they do their monthly little image. They show which games come into PC, which ones come into console, and which ones are coming to cloud. I feel like they don't need to do it. Andy says, I remember thinking that being a weird thing to do, didn't realize it was from leaks, usually massively wrong. I don't think the leaks usually are massively wrong because obviously Call of Duty is one of those things where there's 14 studios working on it. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of people working on Call of Duty. The idea there's not going to be leaks is ridiculous. Like, there are going to be people who leaks it, you know, game testers, people who work in advertising, who get connected to things, people who just aren't that invested in the game and don't care about the developers, essentially, will leak stuff. And then annoyingly, websites and Twitter accounts that don't care about the developers or anything like that, they'll leak stuff and they don't care about the community. So they just leak stuff. And it's very frustrating that happens. And it's like the leaks, I think a lot of the time probably are accurate. It's, you know, often the people who do leak stuff are idiots because they're short-sighted and they're, you know, as I said, they're just sort of damaging the community of the thing that they supposedly love. But that means that they misunderstand stuff sometimes, and we see that a lot of the time. But I think that the leaks are generally probably true. It just makes everything boring. Like with these showcases, with the Summer Games Fest on Thursday, or the Xbox Showcase on Sunday, or the Ubisoft Showcase on Monday, it would be much more exciting if we didn't know anything that's coming for it. And then we sat down and we're like, loads of new announcements and trailers and reveals. That's amazing. If we go into them knowing like 4 or 5 things that are happening, then it's always like just going to be boring. You know, it's always going to make those showcases boring. So I strongly suggest you try to stay away from leaks if you possibly can. Anyway, that's going to be it. Me done for now. I'm going to go make a video now because we had an incredible game of DMZ yesterday that I have to make a video of. It was so good. People who were there know how good it was. And then later today, I'll come back on. I'll be playing some Diablo on Twitch. Just trying to make my druid not bad, which is going to be difficult. Going into the end game, really, sort of starting to explore the end game. And it seems quite complicated. It seems like there's quite a lot going on. Also, just to answer a question, someone was saying, well, I'm just going to scroll back up to it. No, I've lost it. There we go. Flipper Kitten said, I'm sorry, I know I've missed it and you've probably been asked this 100 times already, but why the change in your YouTube? Are you streaming on Twitch now and doing videos here? Yeah, pretty much. So since I started doing the podcast, that meant I'm doing the podcast on YouTube and then I do videos on YouTube. And YouTube has an annoying thing where you will only get to send out 3 notifications in a 24-hour period. And that means that if I stream on YouTube as well, I'd have the podcast and a video and my stream, which would use up all 3. But because it's a 24-hour rolling period, if things didn't line up perfectly, then it might mean that one of those things, normally the podcast probably, won't get notifications sent out for it, which would suck because, you know, I'm trying to grow the podcast. I want this to be like a big part of what I do. I want this eventually to be something that makes me money and get sponsorships and stuff like that. The other reason I stopped streaming on YouTube was because I just don't make any money doing it. Like people, thank you to all the people that have become members. I really appreciate you, but very few people become members on YouTube compared to how many people get subs on Twitch. So even though I make more money from subs on Twitch, I make more money from memberships on YouTube because you get 70% instead of 50%. It's much harder to get people to be members on YouTube. So I just ended up making a lot less money. So I was like, actually, screw it. I'm going to do all my streaming on Twitch, do all my game streaming on Twitch. And it's also a bit more casual. You know, I can change games in the middle of a stream. I don't need to make a new thumbnail and title and stuff like that. I can like hop around and do stuff a lot easier on Twitch. It's a bit more relaxed. And then the podcast and YouTube's a more curated content is going to be right here on YouTube. So I get it's a bit of a pain for people. You've got to make a decision about whether if you're going to support me, are you going to support me on Twitch or YouTube? I appreciate the people who have done it on both. You're absolute legends. But yeah, it's more a money thing than anything, to be honest. It's more just where I can make the most money. And with streaming, don't make any money streaming on YouTube. Even though on Twitch, a lot of the time I'll have 20 people watching. And on YouTube, I used to have 200 people watching when I did DMZ stuff. I still made less money in those 200 people streams than I do in a 20-person stream on Twitch, which is just crazy, but it's just the way things go for me. Oh well, making money and streaming and content creation is super hard, but that's probably because, you know, it's a fun job. If it was easy, everyone would be bloody doing it. Right, anyway, I'm pretty much done now. So thank you so much to everyone that's been watching. Hopefully I'll see some of you later on Twitch while I'm streaming some Diablo. We can carry on some of this chatting and stuff. And I'll see you then. Goodbye.